Welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about how to attract, engage, and retain clients to your veterinary practice using digital marketing. My name is Brandon Brashears. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today's episode, we have a very special guest. It is Danielle Lambert. I've had Danielle on the podcast a bunch of times. If you've been around veterinary marketing for any amount of time, you definitely know Danielle. In today's episode, we do a really deep dive into branding. That is her specialty, and she is really, really great at it. This is definitely an aspect of digital marketing that is not my strength. I'm a direct response person. I love direct response marketing, running ads, and all of that stuff. So the strategy and approach that she takes to branding is truly top notch, and it's been incredible to see the practices that she's been working with. So today's episode, we do deep dive into branding. We talk about just a tremendous amount of really applicable and useful insights that she brings. And so I'm really thankful that she was on the podcast. And I know that this is going to be a tremendous value for you. So be sure to listen all the way through. If you ever have any feedback, let me know. And without further ado, here's Danielle. All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for being on the podcast. You're
Of course.
the first guest ever, so it's always exciting to have you back on.
Repeat offender. I love that for me.
Offender. You were the first one ever on the podcast, though, which is
I
exciting.
can't believe that. Is that I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh. We're OG.
I know. Exactly. OG. Well, so you are, I think, I love your perspective when it comes to branding, and also in particular how you're applying branding in practices, because I think a lot of people look at brand and they kind of just think it's like a logo and maybe a catchphrase. But for everybody, can we just talk about what brand is to you as like kind of a starting point, and then kind of work out from there?
It's everything. Like it really, at the end of the day, brand to me is what people feel when they interact with you. It's what they remember. It's like how they identify that they are the right fit for you. It's all of those kind of intangible things. And like from the consumer perspective, I think that's what brand is. From the perspective of a business owner, startup founder, brand is really your like North Star that is your guiding light in terms of decision making as you are building your business, growing your business. It helps you really filter the choices that you're making. And as your business grows and expand, I really think that brand, the way that I do brand, it also helps your team to feel empowered to keep things, again, in line with your vision as you grow and scale. So it's so big at the end of the day, the way that I look at it. But that's my mini answer.
That totally makes sense. And like I had a guy named Christo on the podcast, and he said, like, if Nike built a veterinary practice, what would that look like? And thinking like
Yep.
it's not just the logo on the website.
Yep.
And I think that's the trap that a lot of practices fall into, is they spend a lot of time just building the logo. And then when you go into the practice, it's like the brand is general private practice. And it's like
Right.
you have a feel and a smell and a look. And
right.
Exactly.
Right.
So how do you think about that? Like, I mean, even more in depth, because I see the things that you do, which is crazy, like amazing, just details, but the entire experience, like how much should people apply brand to like the pens at the front desk and like that kind of stuff? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's so funny because I just visited a startup clinic that I am working on in New Jersey called Bark Ave Veterinary Services. And Crimson, the owner, she handed me a chapstick that is branded as Bark Ave chapstick.
Amazing.
And I was like, we've gone all out. So that's the thing, is like it can be down to those nitty gritty, there we go, details when you are, talking about like the visual side of things. You can get really specific. Like we will design literal wallpapers for veterinary clinics, so that it is, going to match what you see on their website and on their Instagram. But I really think that when it comes to like, ooh, what should I focus on? What should I do? How all out should I go? The visuals really come second. When you work with my agency, the Snout Group, we really start with strategy first. And the most important thing that somebody really needs to get clear on is what problem they're solving and how they solve that problem in a unique way, and then who they solve that problem for. And I don't mean just like, your dog needs to get neutered and I neuter dogs. Like that's like going on a dating app and being like, you're single, I'm single, want to get married? Like that's not what I mean. You have to go really, really deep with that stuff. And I think at the end of the day, that is the number one thing that as a business owner, whether you are doing a startup veterinary clinic, you have an existing clinic, or you're out there trying to maybe do a personal brand and sell CE, you really need to know those things. What problem do I solve? How do I solve it differently than other people? I don't really like to say competition. And then, like, who am I solving that problem for? And that's where you can get really specific. But a lot of veterinary people get scared of that because it means you have to throw out a lot of people pleasing tendencies.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that is I don't know why I never thought about that, but that is a brilliant way to approach it. When you're thinking about types of problems, like people,
Yeah.
what are some examples? I think like people need
Yeah.
examples of the small
Yeah.
ones.
So, and this is something that one of my favorite brand books is called Obsessed. It's by the woman who owns Red Antler, which is a agency that did like all these really big brands like Casper and like Allbirds, like these really big like millennial brands, right?
Mhm.
And she puts it as like this in her book. She talks about putting it like to figure out what your problem is, you have to really act like a toddler and do that like but why question that your toddler would ask you from the back seat. And I really really love that. So if somebody's like, ooh, I don't know what problem I really solve at a deep level, think about this. Like say you sell mentorship coaching for veterinary hospitals, right? And you're like, okay, why does that matter, right? Toddler in the back seat, why? If you think about something like that, it matters because at the end of the day, if you don't mentor team members, you're not going to retain them, right? And you're also not going to have them feel empowered and they're not going to be at the top of their game, like all of those types of things. And you could ask, like, okay, why does that matter? Okay, and go like a little bit deeper and really kind of say, like, it could be things like, ooh, I'm going to cost myself more in the end because I am, going to be trying to recruit doctors all the time and not retaining them. It could be, ooh, these doctors aren't going to be really skilled and, I won't be able to ever get out of my practice because they're not going to know how to do what I do, all of those things. Then you could go even a level deeper with it and say, okay, why does all of that matter? And this is where you could get like a little bit deep. And it might be like, ooh, because my legacy is really important. I want to have an impact on the next generation. And I want to make sure that, we don't end up with a bunch of doctors that are afraid to do surgery. Like, I really want to have a good impact on this next gen and empower them. And that's like really deep. And if you push that even further, why does that matter? It really just gets to that human thing of like, because we're all going to die. Right. And like, I really like that exercise. Like, and I just want to give credit where credit's due because the way she outlined that, I was like, that's the exact way to outline it. Again, that book is called Obsessed. And I really think that's how you dig into those like really deep problems, okay, that you're solving for your ideal person, right? So you have to really look at it and keep picking at it, picking at it, picking at it. And then that's where you get the juicy stuff. And I think that's so important because now instead of just being like, hi, you want some mentorship coaching? You instead are going to say, like, hey, do you want to leave a legacy behind? Like that's a lot more powerful in terms of somebody being like, ooh, I want that, right? Like that's what it's all about.
That totally makes sense. When you're thinking about this problem, and I don't think most people even think about solving a problem for their clients. They're like, we're open and we have these things available. So it's like,
Exactly.
this is what we got. Like, I hope people come.
Exactly.
uh,
Exactly.
do you think it's more beneficial to focus on like your offering or just differences? Or is there a balance between that
I
in
think
your opinion?
that before you figure out what your offering is, you better know what your differentiators are, right? So you might kind of do this work alongside like these three questions of what problem do I solve? How do I solve it differently? And who do I solve it for? Those three things at the end of the day, they are very They have to kind of work together as you figure them out, right? So if you were like, ooh, okay, I am trying to kind of figure out what makes me different, let's say, right? And so, like, let's go with that, like, mentorship consulting example, right? You really are talking about this, like, legacy, impact, all of that. That means that your offering is also something that might kind of get into some deeper, like, personal development work for the actual person that's doing it, like mentoring the mentor, so to speak, right? So I think you want to kind of think about these things kind of all together versus like separately, right? I think it kind of, they have to kind of work together. It's like a tricky one when I'm helping people work through this. Like I will do private strategy days with people and we'll spend 4 hours like having this conversation. And sometimes we have to like go in circles, go in circles, go in circles. And then you start to see like, ooh, this is how the pattern lines up.
Totally. That makes sense. And I think thinking about it this perspective helps you to get an actual differentiator, right? Like saying we care more or like we do all
We
these
treat your
things,
pet like family. Yeah.
but like what would actually show that? And why
Right.
is that important? And
Right.
what are you doing that's actually conveying and proving that you're doing that rather than just saying it, so to speak.
Massively. And that's a big thing. Like I talk a lot about creating like no BS brands because I hate a BS brand that I feel like it's just all floof and nothing to back it, right? So, you'll see something like a Target go and do, all this like paraphernalia for Pride Month and they're going to sell all this Pride merch, right? But then they won't actually back that community when like rubber meets the road. And I think that's BS. And so for me, like the kind of brands that I like to create are ones that really are going to back up that message, right? Like think of how many apartment buildings you see that open up and it's like luxury apartments, right? Like we see that all the time. Luxury apartment. Every apartment I see that opens where I live in Worcester, Massachusetts is a luxury apartment.
I
That is
think it's
not the
everywhere.
accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally. And here's the thing is like that it starts to be nothing, right? I lived in an apartment when I was in Orange County that was almost $4,000 a month that marketed itself as luxury. And it had like a TV in the pool and like a gym that was nicer than the Equinox next door. Okay. That was luxury. But that being said, they marketed it as luxury and then like concierge was terrible all the time. Like I had like ants in my closet and they didn't come get the ants for like a week. I was going crazy, like spraying the ants with, Clorox or whatever. And it's like, that isn't backing up what you're claiming. So at the end of the day, it's like you want to differentiate yourself so that you aren't just another, oh, this is luxury. This is luxury. Like, no, it's not. You also want to back it up because if somebody is spending money with you, this is where bad reviews are born. If you set an expectation and you do not meet that expectation, this is where we have a disconnect and we have bad reviews. This also is really true for employer brand because if you set an expectation with your employees, like that you are this progressive practice and you are going to treat everybody so well, ba 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 ba. And then when again rubber meets the road, you're like, ooh, I can't really, actually pay you a living wage, stuff like that. Again, we're marketing BS and it's really easy to do that. There's plenty of huge brands in the veterinary industry that will market BS all day. And it's like the very corporate thing to do. Like we're owned by billionaires, but we care, right?
Yeah.
And it's just BS at the end of the day. And that's not the kind of brand that I like to build. I really like to build something that you are going to back up because that's how you save money in the long run by investing time and effort into this upfront. Long term, you are saving yourself in terms of client retention, team member retention, just headaches overall.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, there's ways to convey and then actually like I think acting on like what you're saying, what your core values are is the
Yeah.
way that you're gonna actually prove that you're different
Oh,
for sure.
150%. Like I actually push my clients when I'm working with people really in depth, like long term, either if we've done actual brand strategy for them or if they're in my mastermind, the long game, we really go deep. And with core values, I like to actually push it even further to a brand promise. Cause I find a lot of times core values, it's like integrity, authenticity, like whatever.
Yeah.
And that's great. But what does that mean in action? right?
Yeah.
And so really at the end of the day, I like to have a really clear brand promise. And like a brand promise is a little bit more actionable. It's something like, I think of that Bark Ave Veterinary Services that I was talking about, their brand promise off the top of my head, but like something along the line of we go the extra mile, right? And it's unique to their branding and their whole vibe if you see it, but it also is really a mantra for like team members when they're making decisions, for, the leadership when they're making decisions. It's something that really is just like more actionable and like ingrained in there than the traditional, just like generic core values. I like to distill it down and be like, okay, what does that actually mean?
And yeah, totally. And then it's easy to convey to employees so that they can like act it out rather than they don't know what authentic is. Like it means something different to everybody. So that totally
150%, right? Like if you're just like, we're authentic, like, okay,
I'm having a
oh,
terrible day.
like,
I'm gonna yell at all the
yeah,
customers.
exactly, right? Like
Yeah.
that really at the end of the day can go a little bit rogue. And I think when it's something that is more specific and more tangible to people, then they're able to actually embody it. And that is so critical if you're trying to scale to multiple practice sites. I think that people really need to know what you stand for. I would argue one of the only brands I see do a really good job of this in veterinary medicine, at least at the outset, was Veterinary Emergency Group. Like they really indoctrinated their people, for lack of better words. Like there are people that will be like, that's a cult. But that is really good at the end of the day for a brand. You want your team members to be so like clear on what you stand for and so bought in. But then what gets tricky, and I see this with brands as they grow, a lot of times it gets hard to maintain it. It's why I'm not a huge fan of these like private equity backed, venture capital backed brands, because they grow too fast and it's hard to maintain these claims. It's hard to continue to empower people to do the things that you set out to do. But that's a whole separate rant that I could go on.
That's super interesting. I think Veg is still doing a really good job as much as they have scaled. Like I don't know what's going on internally or anything, but just
Yeah.
from like they're competing in every single market that I'm working in, and
Yeah.
they're doing a good job with their stuff in like at scale. Can only imagine
They're
how.
a case study in why employer brand matters so much. They did exactly what I would have done. And right, their first couple of hires were all my personal brand clients, like people like Dr. Tanasia Crocker, like all these people that had big audiences. And I was like, that is so smart. Like they really knew how to like come in and establish an employer brand, have these people act as like ambassadors. But the thing is, I'm actually working with an independently owned veterinary practice right now that's an ER. And
Mhm.
so they really deal with a lot of competition from both Veg and Blue Pearl nearby for employees, right? And so that's been a really interesting project to kind of say, ooh, how do we create an employer brand that is differentiated from that? Right.
Yeah.
And the take we're kind of going with on it, just to kind of give some inside scoop here, is, with Veg, they really push this narrative of you're a superhero. We're kind of going very anti-hero with it because
Okay.
there's definitely a veterinary professional that really resonates with that you're a superhero message, but there are also veterinary professionals that gives them the ick and they're like, no, I don't like that. So that's why you want to know who is your dream client, but also who's that dream team member, right? And kind of know that like psychology for them. And again, the problem that you're solving for them, right? So there might be a team member out there that they see Veg and they're like, that's a cult. I'm not a superhero. That's weird, right? They might be very turned off by the messaging because the messaging is so strong. You can swoop in and say something different. And I think that's why it's so important to kind of wrap your head around that whole, what problem do I solve? Who do I solve it for? And how do I do it differently for both, again, clients and team members is so important.
Definitely. That totally makes sense. One thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about this was
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, especially with like paid advertising like I do, it's pretty easy to identify what needs to be done on an ongoing basis. But I've never actually asked somebody in branding, what do you have to do on an ongoing basis, like to make sure that you're hitting your brand targets? And like I think a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to set this up once, we're going to design the logo, the tagline, and then
Ugh,
it just runs, right?
yep.
So
Yep.
what are like the ongoing branding activities that people need to be
Yeah,
thinking about and
yeah.
doing?
That's a really good question. So, one of the big reasons that we launched our mastermind, the long game, was because I would have people come to the Snout group and they would spend 15, 20, $30,000 on a brand package with us. And then crickets, like I would never see anything used ever again, right? And
Hmm.
so that's really why I started this mastermind, where I could kind of check in with people, at really regular touch points, kind of act as a fractional chief brand officer with them, and we could do this ongoing work. And the ongoing work looks like a couple of things, because when you are the founder of a brand and you are really the steward of that brand, you need to, I joke all the time, like, you can't just be in exam room 3 for the next 3 years and never come out and look at the big picture, right? We need to work on the business, not just in it. So, in terms of some of like the general upkeep things, I think a lot of it actually comes back to good messaging. So, you need to know what your messaging is. And by messaging, I mean, yes, things like a tagline and those like key little slogans that you use, but also messaging in terms of like brand vocabulary and just terms that you use. All of that stuff is really, really important, because it helps to kind of keep a consistent message going out. And in today's world, where we're all scrolling through our phones, people forget things so fast. Like, you have to keep the message on brand. And where I see a lot of my founders struggle is as they start to delegate, they might, hire a social media manager or like this marketing director that's going to do emails, and all of a sudden that whole intent, it goes away. Like, all of that messaging, it goes away. So instead of having like the really unique message that we had, all of a sudden we're like just saying the same stuff, right? So that is probably the biggest thing that I see that needs to kind of get worked on overall. The other really big thing that I find is that we always kind of need to think of like, what's next? What's next? Right. And so for a lot of brands, they might have, like a good Instagram account or a good Facebook account, but like, where are you going next? Okay. Because if you have other big goals, we need to kind of look at like, what platforms could we use to achieve those goals? Right. So a lot of my clients are working on things like YouTube right now. Then I would say maybe the other thing, like, there's so many nitpicky things. A lot of this has to do with training your staff and creating like SOPs around brand. Like, how do we talk about this? What do we do? So, same kind of thing. Like, maybe your team puts together like an offer that they want to push. Is it actually on brand? Is it actually something that makes sense? Is it something that we want to do? Right. Or maybe you're going to do an event. Again, it's about putting that filter on and being like, why does this event make sense for us? Who should we be collaborating with? What should we partner with? What other local businesses? So that's really the ongoing work, is just, you're out there, you're hustling, you're marketing, you're creating new offers, you're selling, but are you always stopping and putting the brand lens back over it? Because like, it comes down to everything, to like what your on hold music is at your practice. There's so many little nitty gritty things. So those are a couple of things that I would say that I would be looking at. Like, what are your marketing efforts looking like? What does the messaging look like? Is it consistent everywhere? What offers, events, partnerships are you doing to promote your business? And how do they make sense, again, for bringing in that dream client or that dream team member? And how do they make sense in terms of like the business that you're really trying to build, and a business that you're going to feel lucky to own in the end? Because that's always my goal with people.
That totally makes sense. And I see, and as you're talking about that with the people that set it up and then nothing happens, I think like ongoing support and ongoing um, basically engagement, making sure that you're helping to get the work done and implemented is so important. There's this one
Yeah.
practice like back in 2017 that I was working with that was just down the street from my house, and he spent he's had hired this agency that was out of New York to do like a
Yeah.
brand package for him for like
Yeah.
$70,000. Like it was
Yeah.
nuts at the time. I couldn't believe it. But like they had the logos and everything, but they just it didn't make the brand happen, and I
No.
was like a complete waste of money. They shut down after a year.
No.
Um, It was
No,
wild.
it doesn't make that's why the way that we are delivering, like I've really leveled up our deliverables recently because I want to make sure again that we're establishing like SOPs, training materials for whoever you're handing this off to, right? So like when I deliver something to somebody like a messaging package, it literally is like probably like 20 different phrases that you use. It's like description of like when do you use these phrases in terms of the client journey. Are you using these phrases like on your website first impressions? Are you using them like in your newsletter, like more experience delivery? Are you using them later on in the client journey to like build community? Like we get really nitty gritty. And same thing with like the visuals. I'm really not even emphasizing the visual side of brand because as much as it is my deep, deep obsession, if we don't start with strategy, there's the visuals are pointless. But we have to have the same SOPs for your visuals because you might invest all this in like a beautiful logo and like we might create other assets for you like illustrations, iconography. I've seen clients that I literally am like, we hired a illustrator who does illustrations for J. Crew to make illustrations for you. And now your social media manager is using illustrations from Canva.
Yeah.
Or like, we picked out all these fonts for you and these colors for you. And now you're throwing other fonts and colors into the scheme. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, I don't want to like completely stifle the creativity of the people that you bring in. But again, brand is like that, it's a North Star for a leader, but it's a filter for a team member. And it needs to go through that filter every single time and make sure, hey, is this actually on brand? So that's another big the visuals. Like my mastermind members, I include like some additional design stuff with them because inevitably they need something else, right?
Yeah.
There's always more once you if you get into design, it's a little addictive.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I follow the clients that you're working with, and it's immediately recognizable because it looks so different. And
Right. No
like
paw
you
prints usually.
exactly, I can see. I'm like, okay, I recognize this. Is this one? Okay, it's Danielle's client.
Yep.
So like, totally, I get that, and I see that. One thing, and I think this is probably even more important now with kind of like AI coming out and being used all the time. I think everything is starting to really sound the same,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yep.
so I think differentiation, like it's super easy if you have like a grid of like 20 things and everything is the same, but one is different. It's easy to pick out
Yep.
the difference versus finding similarities between things. So I think that is even more
Oh,
important.
100%. Like if you're going to use something like a chat GPT and you're going to say, hey, give me a marketing schedule for my veterinary clinic, right? It's going to be like post about National Squirrel Day, post about flea and tick prevention. Like it's going to be all that generic stuff that like nobody's going to care about. You need to
Yeah.
make people care and evoke like an emotional response. And that's the kind of thing that you do when you really know who your dream client is. You know how to speak to them on that deep level. And so, what's really great about the brand work that I really teach people to do or do for them is like, I'm now giving you instructions that you could also give to a chat GPT and say, hey, this is our brand voice. It is sassy and fun and playful. And like, these are the words that we use. And like, we don't say, we don't say something like fur baby. We don't say that. We say like your bestie. We call pets besties, right? Like you have to tell it that. If you tell it all that, it can do a much better job over time. But I love ChatGPT and things like that for like the structure it can provide, but its creativity absolutely sucks. So like you have to come in with the creativity. And so again, whether you're training a team member or a chatbot to do something for you, coming in and having, the creative work done by an actual human professional at first is a good place to start.
I totally agree. And as people use it more and more, it's like everybody's using it now. You can immediately spot emails that are written by it. And it just is now it worked for a little bit, but now it's not so good.
No.
One thing I'm really interested to see, because I know that like I'll work with the practice that's like, say, in like Midwest somewhere, right? And they're like, we want to attract really high quality clients that want to spend a lot of money. They're not really doing anything different. So like they're asking me to make magic happen. But a question that I have for you is how how early should people be talking to you, especially with like brand? Like, let's say I wanted
Oh
to create the
God.
Ritz Carlton, but I'm in Grangeville, Idaho, right? And there's one practice and 3,500 people. So, like, it's not feasible. So,
Yep. I really like to say that I genuinely should be the first person that you talk to. It's why I actually have a deal with Provide, where if you use my affiliate link to secure your loan through Provide, I give you $1,000 credit toward working with me, because like the first things you should be doing are like getting that money and talking to me, because we're going to really talk about, like, if I work with you on a high level, I am going to say, okay, we're going to look at like demographic analysis, right? So my husband's an economics consultant, has access to all sorts of data. I've been talking to Isaiah Douglas with Pinpoint about like the stuff that he does.
yeah,
Whatever it is, I'm going to use real data to be like, okay, this is the kind of person, like get a profile of who lives here. Okay. Because if we want to do Ritz Carlton brand, we need to have Ritz Carlton customer, or we have to
exactly.
create something that's such a destination that maybe somebody would go there. Maybe it's some sort of like rehab center for pets,
Sure.
not like a
Yeah.
whatever. So I think that's really, I like to talk to people so early and often, because I really, at the end of the day, am going to help guide you on decisions that are going to affect literally everything you do, from like the location you build to like how many exam rooms are in that space, like what the waiting room is like, if there is a waiting room. Like all of these kinds of decisions are so impacted by brand when you do brand as in depth as I do. So I'm like, please come to me early. I tell people, like, we're birthing a baby, come to me at least 9 months before you think you're opening, because also
I
you're
think
never
that's
opening
good.
the date you thought you were.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really, really wise.
Yeah.
When people have an established practice, how much do you think they should be focusing on their ideal client versus what exists around them?
Ooh, I think that's a really good question. I really think that you should be as picky as you can until you tap that out. So like, because I think to establish like real raving fans, you want to be really specific about who you serve and serve them in a really specific way. And that's how you get people having an experience that's remarkable. And when something is remarkable, they go and they talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to get people in, like with the practices that I work with, we like to literally start like a wait list before you're even open, right? So that Bark Ave Veterinary Services, it's a lease build, it's in a little plaza, next to like a gym and a Pearl Vision and a restaurant, whatever. We have window clings up with a QR code that says, hey, you're going to get $50 toward your first exam if you get on this list. And we're nurturing that list and talking to them, because we want the people that are like so involved that they are like picking out the lighting and like, oh, I like this light, or oh, I like this flooring. Like people that are so involved in this whole process, those are the people that are going to then go tell their friends, like, oh, I went to this practice and it was gorgeous and I helped pick the lights, no big deal. So I
Totally.
think you want to be really picky at first, and then at the end of the day, hopefully your dream client, there's enough of them that it's sustainable for your business. But if it does hit a point where we're like, ooh, maybe we need to reevaluate that. And I think for sure, going into like the economy that we're currently in, I think you want to like be realistic and take a zoom out and say, like, okay, who's really in this community? And like break it down, like what's the household income look like, what's their spending look like, and get more specific on it. And yeah, over time you might need to adjust, moral of the story. But I think in the beginning, a big mistake I actually see people make, whether it's startup practices or I really see it with consultants, is they're too thirsty in the beginning. They're like, anybody that shows up, anybody that wants to buy something from me, anybody that wants me to be their consultant, right? And really, that's how you attract people that I call them energy sucking demons. It's like the Dementors in Harry Potter, and they're just going to suck your will to live. And when someone is sucking your energy and distracting you from your vision, you are never going to create a business that you feel lucky to own. So you have to have the confidence to know who your dream client is, really focus on them in the beginning, because otherwise you're going to be all over the place, complete chaos.
That makes total sense. What in line with that, knowing who you don't want as like a absolute, we don't want these types of clients, not making like a judgment on them, but like, hey,
Yeah.
it's not a good fit for you. How
Yeah.
much do you think is like, okay, we're gonna attract these people, but here's what we stand against? Like
Yeah.
how should people balance that?
Yeah, I think the biggest question that veterinarians, especially with like when we talk about like a veterinarian that owns a practice, the biggest thing people don't want to talk about is who don't we want coming here? Beyond just like, oh, people that are rude to us, right? Like people will talk about that. When we get into other stuff, it can be a little bit messy and people are like, ooh, like this is just for, rich people, or this is just for this person, or blah, blah, blah. I really am somebody that I think there's such an abundant need for veterinary care in the world that it does a disservice to somebody to try to be everything to them. You
Yeah.
really want to get picky. And I think at the end of the day, in terms of really, like, am I being too picky? Am I repelling the wrong people? Like you need to think about things that might feel a little uncomfortable. And like I said, it's about throwing the people pleasing out, right? I've had
Hmm.
to do this in my own business, okay? I had to get really real with the fact that like I don't really like every single person in the veterinary industry. Just because you're a veterinary professional doesn't mean we're going to click. And if I'm going to help you at a really high level, we need to be like same on some level. We have to like be vibing, okay?
Yeah.
And so I have to be really 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 polarizing in my messaging, because if you know believe like don't want to pay your team a living wage and you come to me and you want me to market you as this great employer, this is going to be again like the energy sucking demon, right? I'm like, oh god, this is awful for me. So I really think like it's a very uncomfortable process to be completely honest with people, like with yourself, I mean, about who you really do and do not want to serve, but you have to do it. And I think you have to realize like you might not like I have a client that they really do want to work with somebody that's willing to go above and beyond for their pets, but and they do charge higher prices than other clinics in the area, but they are open to doing like payment options, with like a vet billing, something like that. So remember that just because you want to really go all out, you can think about ways of like, how do I make this accessible? So I think
Yeah.
that's an important thing to remember.
Totally makes sense. So one thing that I was wondering about, and you have launched this recently, can you tell us about your new list that you
Yeah.
have and all
The
the cool stuff
lucky
that you got coming
list.
out, the lucky list?
Okay, well, this actually kind of gets to who knowing my dream clients, right? And so I have dream clients that show up and they're like, yes, Danielle, I'm ready to go all in. I can pay you 50 grand in full. Let's do the mastermind. And I want a whole design package, right? I have clients like that. And that's awesome. Like, I love being able to serve that person, but I know not everybody has the budget for like a $25,000 mastermind. That might not be where they're at, right? However, I really, at the end of the day, am somebody who likes to put this information out, right? And I want to help people because there might be a dream client for me that they're not at that point in their journey yet, but they're gonna have that kind of, like, I want to invest in you long term. I'm playing a long game myself, right? And I want to make sure that you have the best information as you can in the beginning, so that ultimately when you do launch your business, whether it's that startup practice, that CE business, you really are going to have everything that you need, that it's going to do well. And then hopefully, I'll be totally transparent. I hope you come to me and buy that brand package. Like, let's go. Like, I love that, right? So the lucky list is really about helping people to get that initial clarity on what their no BS brand is, right? Like, what's your edge? Those things that I was talking talking about today in terms of, like what problem do you solve? Who do you solve it for? How do you do it differently? It's about giving people, I give them like a 23-page ebook that breaks that down with like journal prompt questions and everything. So you can really work through the process just like I do with my high-end clients that are working with me at a high-end level. So it is like a juicy little ebook. So that's what the Lucky List is about, is it's about kind of giving you the stuff to get going. And then because I do really believe brand is a long game, and the way I look at brand is so robust and intense, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dropping quarterly different podcast seasons that are going to be a private podcast that do a deep dive on something like how to build your brand as a personal founder, or how to do a employer brand that people can't resist, right? Like really doing these different seasons. And then there's also going to be a newsletter aspect to kind of more so show like the behind the scenes. I really like to be transparent about how I'm building my own business, the brands that I'm working on, like stuff I've shared with you today. Like I'm a pretty open book, and my clients that come to me, sometimes we have to be a little top secret, but like once they can be public, they like it. It's always a benefit of working with me, is I'm going to tell everybody about you too. And so I really, at the end of the day, want to kind of share more of that behind the scenes with the Lucky List. So yeah, the Lucky List is literally just going to be a couple bucks a month. Like right now I'm launching it and it's $2.99 a month right now, $2.99. Like when I said $2.99, people are so used to me being expensive, they thought $299.
Yep.
And I was like, no, no, no. And my team was like, Danielle, why are we doing this? And I was like, no, because I really want those people that have been following me and want to go deeper on this, but just haven't had the budget. I really want to have a space for them, like genuinely. So that is what the Lucky List is about. I am going to be bumping up that price. It is going to be going up. So by the time this is out, it might be a couple bucks more a month, but my aim is to keep it literally under $10 a month. And I am going to give people that are listening to this a free month. So if you go to jointheluckylist.com and use code Brandon, you're going to get your first month free. So jointheluckylist.com and the code will be Brandon, and you can get that for free for your first month. So even if you're like, I heard her on this podcast, I like some of what she said, I still don't trust her. You're maybe like a little bit of a skittish German Shepherd, and you're like, I don't know. That way you can test it out and see like what I'm about, get more information. And I know it's going to be so juicy that you're like, I'm going to stay. So that's what the Lucky List is really about in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I love it because there's just so much content out there. Also, you have historically produced so much content, especially on Instagram. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't know how you do that because it is so much work. And I think
I'm trying to get off that hamster wheel, man. That's like,
that,
I'll be transparent too. Like, and I'm going to talk about this. That's a big reason why I'm doing this list is I have an autoimmune disease that I manage. Like I cannot show up consistently on social the way that I always could, the vim and the vigor of like a 27-year-old. Like, no,
yeah,
also like I'm married. I like my husband. I like my life. I want to like enjoy it. I have hustled my butt off. I girl bossed my way into an autoimmune disease. And now I'm really like, hey, I want to have a little bit more space to create content. Yeah. And this is probably really woo woo, but like you're from Southern California. Energetically, it feels crappy when you give people free forever. And you're like, am I not worth $2.99 a month to you? You know what I mean? Like there's something about that just, it feels draining. And I want to kind of revamp that. So yeah, put a ton of free content out. I'm still going to have free content like on my blog. If you're on my like general newsletter, if you go to danielleklambert.com, that's my main website now. I've like taken a step back from like, if you're OG and Snout School, my educational stuff is on danielleklambert.com now. So there'll be free stuff over there. But like the stuff that's really in depth, that shows my like real opinions, that shows my real process, it's going to be on the Lucky List. And plus it's going to be like more organized. So you're not like, scrounging around Instagram trying to find everything. Like it will
yeah.
be more clear for you.
I totally love that. And it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because I've done free trainings in the past. I don't do free trainings anymore because when people sign up, they don't take it. And even
Yeah.
when people do pay for it, only about 50% actually consume
Yep.
the content. And I
Yep.
want you to take it. And I think having buy-in for it is going to help you to pay attention to it. And so,
150%, right? Like I'm doing a challenge right now that I've done as a free challenge in the past, and it's a little bit more robust this time. And I was like, it's 2.99. Like it just feels better. So I think that it's really fair when you've like paid your dues to kind of say, hey, like if you want to kind of continue this conversation, keep following me, get on the lucky list. I'll be there. I think that's
awesome.
fair.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think also it's going to force you to actually pay attention to it, which is helpful because there's just so much noise out
I
there.
Trust me, as somebody that mostly works with high-end clients, I love how they show up. My high-end clients show up ready, they implement, they like really, really it's gratifying for me. It lights me up that they implement like they do, right? And that they really take stuff and run with it. That's what gives me joy in the world and purpose. I feel no purpose if you're like just consuming my stuff on Instagram and liking it and not doing anything. That's not fun for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that jointheluckylist.com if you're like, okay, I'm ready to actually pay attention, Danielle.
Yeah. And implement. Exactly. I love it.
Exactly.
Well, let's finish off with just a couple things. So give me your top 3 things that practices need to stop doing right away, and then one thing that you think everybody should do. So
Okay.
3 things that like let's
Oof.
take 3 things off their plate and give
Mm.
them one thing to do.
Okay. All right. Stop putting paw prints in every single logo or like a whole illustration in every single logo. Every logo does not need 17 things in it. Please stop doing that. Two, stop trying to be for everybody. You are going to drive yourself insane. And also, there's no money in the messy middle. Like, you want people to love you or hate you. That's really how the world works and how you're going to make money. And three, I would also say stop treating marketing and brand as an afterthought. They are core critical parts of your business. I know I'm singing your song, Brandon. Like it's not
Yep.
an afterthought. Like this is not, something that you're maybe going to do. Remember that like knowing your brand is going to be that filter for your team, that North Star for you. So stop ignoring the fact that you got to address this stuff.
Okay, cool. And what's one thing you think everybody should start doing?
Ooh, if I had one thing that I would love everybody to start doing, I really would say share more of your actual opinions on things. I think people are very scared to do that. They like to, again, stay very like safe. And you don't have to come off as sassy and edgy as I will in my content, but say what you think because that's how you get people that filter. Again, like love me or hate me, but there's no money in the messy middle is like a quote that I live by.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited. I'm going to join the Lucky List for sure. So.
Awesome. Thank you.